I'll call to order the Brattleboro Planning Commission for Monday, March 19th. And we have a few items before I open the public hearing. First, we'd like to approve the minutes of January 3rd, 2018. Any discussion about these minutes? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions or noes?
I'm abstaining.
I'll abstain since I wasn't there.
All right, well, it passed.
I'm sorry, who made a motion? Who seconded?
Did he make the motion?
I think I did, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, was there any second?
I seconded.
Okay, thank you.
You said all in favor.
sorry,
I was reading this and you said all in favor, so I said aye
There
for
you go.
passing those in.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll be better on the next one.
Working on it.
Okay, the minutes of February 5th. Is there any discussion? Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the minutes of February 5th?
I'm so moved.
Seconded?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. There you go. Motion's passed. Now, is there any public comment that's not related to the public hearing for the draft town plan? Hearing none. Let's open the public hearing for the draft 2018 town plan. It is March 19th, 2018, and it is whatever time it is. 6:08. Okay. Now, copies of the proposed plan and report have been mailed to the neighboring towns, Wyndham Regional Commission, and the state on February 16th, 2018. A public hearing notice was in the Brattleboro Reformer on March 3rd. Public hearing notices were posted in 4 public places: the library, the town clerk's bulletin board, the planning department bulletin board, and the recreation and parks department. Copies of the draft 2018 town plan are available at the planning services department, at the library, and the town website. Now, recognizing that written public comment was to receive by today at 6 p.m., we received 3 letters. One from Rich Holscher, one from Lori Callahan, and one from Maya Hasegawa. So, I will open up the floor for public comment. Anyone who would like to make a comment, please state their name and address, and we'd love to hear your comments.
Address.
Then
you put the address.
how does this go? Like I can just, okay. My name is Chantal Kander, and I live on Western Avenue in Brattleboro, Vermont. And I took a look at the plan, but I had one specific question around in the arts section for some of the ideas and goals that the town is interested in trying to attain in that area. What exactly are the actions like to close that gap? One of the things that I noticed what was missing, and maybe I overlooked something, but there was a mention of the town arts committee, but as far as I know, that I have not really known of it being active, and so my question was specifically around, is there any specific potential plan to reinstate the town arts committee, and also if they would possibly be playing a role in meeting some of the goals in that section around arts and culture? And if there are any thoughts about that.
Do you want me to
I
respond?
do, Rod. Let's ask our town planner, Rod.
Okay. Hi. So, in terms of, municipal administration, each one of the boards and committees that's formed, and they're formed at the behest of the select board, has a staff person that supports them, and it's the town manager that is the support person for the town arts committee. Town arts committee has not had a quorum, and in fact, I think has now only 1 or 2 identified members, and has been in that circumstance for some months now. And I think that the town manager proposes to discuss it with the new select board. And I'm not sure, there were no nominations in this latest round. People didn't step forward and want to become a member of the town arts committee in this latest round of vacancies that were filled. So I think the best term I could apply to the arts committee is that it's in a form of abeyance. Like it's on the books, but it's not operational. And that there are specific policies and goal or action steps that are identified in the implementation section of the 2015 town plan for the town arts committee to perform. And I think they're in conjunction with the town manager's office. So I think we're operating on, certainly when we wrote the plan in 2015, the committee was functional or active. And I think that we're operating on the presumption that it will resume at some point.
So one of the lines was about encouraging partnerships among the arts organizations and such, and so it would be under like an idea that if there is a town arts committee, that maybe they may play that role in being a conduit for that
Right.
that actual action happening.
And parenthetically, all I can say is that people who have art projects that they wish the town to play a role in, or they're proposing something that would be located on town property, whether it be a sidewalk or a wall or whatever, that they make the approach directly to the town manager.
Oh, of course, yeah.
And I would add, I mean, I think that there are some actions in here that either the planning department or the planning commission or both working together would be addressing. So we talk about placemaking and we talk about master planning and including art in that, and that's definitely the purview of this commission. And so they'd also play a role.
Was there a specific action you had in mind when you were thinking of it, or was it more general to make sure?
Well, it was more around the question because for some of the steps or some of the things that were mentioned, like something like encouraging partnership, I know from personal experience, like unless there is a person from one of the organizations going around and actually doing that, or if there's someone outside of that role if there isn't anyone doing that, then there is, and not to blame anyone, but there's just a tendency for people to kind of stay in their silos and everyone's so busy. But I was just curious in terms of how were those things going to actually happen? They're great ideas, but how are they going to actually be implemented through action? So, that's when I started thinking about, what's the status of the Town Arts Committee and how they play a role in all of that. So, thank you.
Okay. Would you like to comment?
I would. I'm Howard Burrows, and I'm a trustee at the library, and I'm chair of the Fine Arts Committee at the library. I'm interested in the fact that we have just gone through at the library a 5-year plan, and it has quite a few elements that I'd love to see incorporated into this plan. And I can, this is in the town rep handout on
Right.
page 55, and it lists the service priorities for the library. And particularly the last 2 I'd love to see introduced. I can read them all if you want, they're quick.
Sure.
Please.
Stimulate the imagination. So these are what we're planning to do over the next 5 years. And we have a new librarian, and we have some endowment changes that were positive. So we've done a lot of construction, and there's a great report in this town handout about changes at the library. So the service priorities that we're focusing on stimulate the imagination and support lifelong learning. And I think I'd love to see that in the education section. And it's through assistance, resources, and programming for reading, contemplating, viewing, listening, and conversing. Second one is engage the community through outreach, awareness, and collaboration. Collaboration, I think, is central. Support young learners from early literacy on. You talk about the library in the public school system, not so much preschool, and I think that's a great role for the library. Empower teens. We've got a lot going on with teens now. We have a new room for teens with a lot of programming. Entertainment and engagement. Education, entertainment, and engagement. I think the role of computers these days in entertainment, makerspace, is a lot of stuff. You mentioned makerspaces in there, which is cool, which are sorts of games, but also three-dimensional printing, a lot of robotics, a lot of artificial intelligence.
Does the library have a 3D printer?
We don't. I think we can get access to one.
Yes, at the Career Center.
Oh.
Yeah. Thank you.
It's good.
So we do provide physical and virtual spaces. The virtual spaces is the one I'm most interested in here. Library is a presence, not a place anymore. We really want to have virtual spaces. So we've got these mailbox libraries, the little things that the Friends developed and they're selling. And they're going to go up in neighborhoods around town, so there'll be library presence all over. We're also trying to get programs and our art displays distributed more widely. And then the last two are technology. I mean, the library is so different. It's no longer just a place to access books. Foster technological understanding and confident creative participation in an interconnected world. Library now, through its outreach, through its wires, through its wireless, we really have a chance to be much more central to the business community. I'd love to see us integrated into the economic development plan here. And develop information literacy, which is a brand new concept. I mean, library users of all ages, particularly if you're not in school, you are getting left behind, and the library is the place to do that, I think. It's just a beautiful place to have that happen. Find and evaluate information, think critically, and make decisions based on reliable information. We have a duty from the state to help make democracy better, and that's a central role right now with false news and fake whatever. So we're putting an emphasis on that. We're going to need resources that we haven't had before. We have probably, I mean, I don't need to say that, but we have a very good technology person in the library right now being paid as a librarian. Anywhere else in the state, he can get 5 times his salary. We need somehow to build into the library a new role that's quite different. And I think that ought to be in the plan.
And is there a copy of this new library plan that?
We have a copy.
You have a copy?
If you have this,
I do.
think you can get downstairs. Page 55 has a reference to the plan, which is online right now.
Okay.
This is the actual plan, and you have a section on the history of the library, and this reads somewhat differently. Brattleboro's had a library for over 160 years. The library's been central to Brattleboro for a long time. We've been the publishing mecca, for Boston and elsewhere. So library has a long history. I think you cite the new building because the plan right now is more land use than perhaps the rest of the economic development and intellectual arts development, everything else. Anyway, so yeah.
All right.
You can copy this probably right out of our plan, which is online.
Well, I thank you both very much for your comments. Do we want to respond to the comment? Or just
I think if
take it under advisement?
take it under advisement and then close the hearing, and then if
Okay,
commissioners
yeah.
want to discuss.
Let me read what our task is
Yeah.
next.
Then if commissioners want to discuss making minor amendments on the basis of either these comments or other things, then
Okay.
What
that's
about
something
Do
that
we-
the commission
written
can.
comments?
Can
Should
we read these?
Yeah, should we, or highlight any portions of them for anybody watching?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we can do either. They can be read into the record, or we can just summarize.
Can I ask Shanta a question?
Yeah.
Is that
of
all
course.
right? Do you have any like wording or verbiage you'd like to see added to it?
Yeah, because in here,
Okay.
yes, because in hearing the response about, I would love, and maybe this is something I might email in. I would love to see a more fleshed out language around the recognition in the new plan that there needs to be, some effort to reestablish a town arts committee, obviously as it relates to who's responsible for that, but also, and then a little more massaging in terms of the ways that that entity can play a direct role in ensuring some of the action steps. Because they're great ideas and I like them a lot. It would be just great to see if maybe directly, because it doesn't say who is doing the encouragement. It doesn't say who. So maybe there could be some language around that, and maybe one of the action steps is actually trying to, an effort, again, as it relates to the town manager and the select board for reestablishing the town arts committee so that it's not just on the books but active. So I would say, does that answer your question a
Well,
little bit?
so I'm new here.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing.
I'm new too.
Yeah. Is it all right if I ask her? Do you want to write it up and then email it to Sue,
Sure.
and then
Sure.
Well,
like in the sense, a rough idea, like a basis.
Yeah,
of,
because you guys would know
Well,
best in terms of what
We've heard your comments.
Okay.
I know.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know that we need to necessarily put it on.
Yeah.
Shanta. I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
I get what she's saying.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, I
yeah.
could-
Yeah, just flush
Your
out.
comments,
Yeah.
we heard them. We'll-
Okay.
Okay,
Cool.
so
Yeah.
Cool.
here's the deal.
Perfect.
So, first let's take, just a minute to just talk generally about what these three comment letters are. Rich Holschutz on March 18th writes that he would like additional information about the Abenaki Indians to be in the Historic and Scenic Resource section. So we've received that. And then Lori Callahan is also talking about the Historic and Scenic Resources and also the Municipal Roads General Permit,
Stormwater.
stormwater. A variety of comments. And then comments to the natural resource section. And then Maya Hasegawa, first comment is about homeschooling and lifelong learning, and then aging housing stock. The former Lamplighter Motel. I think that was mentioned in a building code. That's a difficult question. And various wording changes, wastewater treatment, trash, and so forth. So we will take all of these comments into advisement, and then our task now is to consider the comments and to decide if we want to make any changes in the report at this time. And then after that, a version of the report will be forwarded to the select board. The select board will hold 2 public hearings no less than 30 days after receiving the plan. And the ultimate decision of whether or not to adopt the plan is made by the select board. So, just a little bit confused. Do we consider these comments after we close the public hearing?
Yes.
Yes, you do.
Okay.
So what you do now, you can close the hearing if there's no one else or no other comments to be taken, and then open the regular meeting. Well, you've already got and it's
Right.
inside the regular meeting, so the regular
Okay.
meeting, you resume the regular meeting, and then you, as a commission, you can discuss what, if any, amendments, minor amendments you want to make to the language of the town plan, and then you can then contemplate voting on that draft as it's been amended tonight and forward that
To the select board.
And that's minor amendments, as I recall.
Right.
Significant amendments would require more due
Yep.
process.
Yeah, but I don't think we've heard anything tonight that constitutes a major.
Right. Okay, so,
I've got extra copies of these letters if
Yeah,
the
sure.
public, if you'd like to see them and have a minute to read them, and
If you want to participate.
since we didn't read them into the
Right.
record.
If you want to
are
participate in the
interested in
discussion
seeing-
of the written comments, you're more than welcome to do so.
Extra comments.
Well, then
I have
I'm-
a question, I guess.
okay, I won't close the hearing until that's settled. Yes, go ahead.
The trustees really are late to the table, and we haven't really had a chance to look at this. I don't think, like Rod said, I don't think we have major changes, but I would love to see just a mention of the library's sort of changing role in more of the sections there. Will we have a chance to just add little headers and sections, or is this gonna, you're not gonna edit it anymore before you send it to the select?
No, we're gonna close the public hearing. We're gonna discuss your comments and the comments that have been received. See if we wanna add elements, words to the report before we send it to the select board. So, we may do that now, or the select board may do that. That's the process.
So let me try and explain it slightly differently, Howard. So you've got verbal comments that you've made tonight, and you've referenced page 57, 55 of the town report. So the commissioners are able to assimilate what you've said, make decisions about what they do and don't want to include, and make decisions on that tonight. They can also make a decision that there's more work involved in this and they want to actually have staff prepare revisions and then meet subsequently and review a subsequent draft and then vote on that and forward that to the select board. From a timeline perspective, it would be preferable, I think, from our standpoint, when I say our, I mean staff, and to some extent the planning commission, for us to be able to finalize things tonight. So to the extent that whether or not you are a bit late to the party, yeah, you're a bit late. That being said, I don't think anything that you're suggesting is a dramatic U-turn or anything. It's more correcting factual information and adding some information that's in light of the library's new master plan that it has, strategic plan that it has. We referred to the strategic plan in reviewing this version of the town plan, so I think that we've tried to capture as much of the information that we could. If you want to help us make that a little better, that's fine. So I think it might take us a while to kind of beat the words into the right shape, but I think we can do it. And Shanta, I'd say the same for your comments, with the one proviso that the future of the Arts Committee is unclear to us in a sort of an official or formal way.
Yeah.
And so the plan is written as if the Town Arts Committee is functioning and existing. Right now it's in abeyance, it's not meeting, it's not functioning. So I don't know how the commission feels about it, but one assumption we could operate with is that there will be another arts committee, and then when there is, it'll fulfill this charge.
Maybe there should be a note about that then very clearly in the plan so that anybody reading it doesn't assume that there's an active, I mean, only because when
Right.
it just, in the interest of, communicating to the public and letting them know
Right.
what, just saying at the moment that this report is issued, or however you wish to state it, to
Well-
let people know that it's not
Yeah.
currently.
I would think that just stating that the responsibility for the action, you want it to be assigned to a person or an entity, that if it was assigned to the Arts Committee, that we can just assume that within the next 8 years, that this plan is viable.
Well, and it's
that
just an
the Arts
example.
Committee-
Like, it doesn't have to be them, but I was just thinking, wow, great ideas. Who is actually making these actionable? So that's the only reason why I started thinking about, well, that's meant, the Town Arts Committee is mentioned, but, just making it clear,
Yeah.
maybe some note of
I
the
would rather,
current status.
I would rather give them the task and not necessarily state that they're in a bit of a crisis at the moment. And just assume that they will recast themselves as a viable entity. Does anyone have any comments about the comment letters that we've received? Let's start with the ones about the Native Americans.
Is the hearing closed now? Are we now just having a meeting? or-
Actually, I want to hear
Oh,
from
okay.
the members of the public, whether they have any comments about these comment letters.
So starting with Rich's.
Yeah. And you're perfectly within your rights to say no.
Yeah, I thought that Rich's letter was, highlighted something that's very important and key, especially as it relates to the uniqueness of this area. So that, in addition to the others, seem like okay comments to make
Right.
or submit.
I also like his letter very much. The library does have some of those artifacts in it, and I think
Yes.
it's important to sort of mention that. But
Yeah, there's a nice case in that upstairs meeting room with all sorts of
we have a
artifacts.
case and we have a huge collection that's not on display that also has Native American.
Okay, any comments about the Lori Callahan letter, comment letter?
I assume the pagination's gonna get taken care of. There are a number of pagination
Yeah, there's
issues.
some editing, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. And then, any comments about Maya Hasegawa's letter? I think in general, we're probably ready to close the meeting and close the public hearing, and then the commission will consider all the comments given.
I like the zoning change. It's a big deal.
Okay, I'd like a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Seconded?
Second.
Okay, all in favor of closing the public hearing?
Aye.
Great. So the public hearing is closed at 6:36.
I'm gonna scooch up around because I can't.
You guys sitting behind me is really weird.
And we thank the public for their
Thank you.
participation.
You are welcome to stay.
Yeah. Thanks, Howard.
Okay, so,
Do we have a copy of the
I don't have more copies of the plan, so I'm like a little bit disturbed. There's so few copies at the table. I might have one, let me check. Otherwise, I'm gonna have to go send it on the printer.
Sorry,
Felicity
Sarah.
has
I can look
I
on
have
it.
one, yeah, I brought the one.
You're right, I can print those for us, they're huge.
It's the same one that you got last week, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me just take a break and make copies.
I can find it on my
No,
phone.
it's okay.
and Felicity, I'd like you to meet Jessica
Hi.
Hi.
To meet you.
and Kate.
Hi.
So we have a new member, and Casey has told us she'll be leaving us. So we thank you for your service.
Thanks, guys.
Are
I
you
miss you all.
leaving town?
I am. That's the only reason I would leave the planning commission.
Oh.
Yeah, going to Boston. More opportunities there for me. I have a new job.
Cool.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Gonna be a project coordinator for an architecture and engineering firm. I'm already an administrative assistant at Stevens and Associates, so it's kind of an expansion of what I'm doing now.
Super.
Thanks.
Exciting.
I was an admissions counselor at Marlboro before.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The students speak very highly of you.
Some
I
of
told them you were, because I'm friends with some of them still, and
Okay.
yeah, I told them you were joining.
All right. These are done.
So do we need to go through all of these comments and check to make sure?
I think we can
This seems so
generally.
incredibly accurate.
Yes. I think we
Why
can.
isn't she in this group?
She's on the natural resources.
Oh, okay, all right.
I think we can leave it to Rod and Sue to incorporate.
Because, okay, all right, good. So we
Is
don't
there
need to do
anything
that
that
kind of
we
thing.
wouldn't want to, or do we want to leave it to their discretion?
Well, let's get them back in here and we'll talk to them about it.
I mean, it seems so.
I mean, I know, so Lori is an aquatic invasives expert. So she takes a really hard line against invasives.
Right, no, I
So
love
There's only
some of
one
her
way to be
language
with
is a
invasives.
is a little intense, and I don't know.
Well, but she's right about changing non-native to invasive, because it's true that we like some non-native things, like certainly apple trees.
Yeah. Where would we be without apple trees?
Exactly.
She was most concerned about the compliance with the water runoff and that getting incorporated.
And what is the water runoff? Is that
Point number two.
Point number 2?
I borrowed your town report so they can.
Oh, mine?
I borrowed the town report at the end.
Oh, for the
Oh,
library.
thank you. Yeah,
Yes.
That's fine.
all right.
So how do you want to do this? Do you want to start with,
I'll pull them off as
Well,
Yeah.
let's start with Howard's comments because he's here.
let me, do you want me to give you some context for that?
I would, that would be lovely.
All right, so the current chapter reflects, the current draft reflects our reading of the Brooks Library strategic plan and conversations with the library director and in fact Howard. If there are factual errors, I think we can attend to those fairly easily, and I'm sure between Howard and Star we can identify if there are any and where they are. I think that
There's a discussion.
it's a fairly succinct description of the library services and recent changes to the library's operation and the quality of the building as a consequence of the large endowment that the library received a couple of years ago. And that's the single biggest change, I guess, and the new director between the writing of the 2015 town plan and the 2018 town plan. Don't think
Some discussion.
that the discussion of the library in the town plan needs to be of the same detail or take on exactly the same direction as the material in the town report that you're looking at now, Liz, and is in the strategic plan itself. So in other words, the library is a sort of a semi-autonomous entity as it is, and it's it's got its own planning processes and its own resources and its own board, and so it's free to plan and develop and document those plans as it sees fit. So it's a question of how much duplication does the Planning Commission want to get into with the discussion of the Brooks Memorial Library in the town plan.
And what do we have now in the town plan about the library?
Well, there's something on page 57, and there's
The
something on page
library-
70.
The library is mentioned at least 33 times.
Oh, God, okay.
In the draft town.
Everyone's
So,
talking about it. Yeah.
The first time it appears is in the education section.
Yep.
Okay. So I think that the important
It's a
part.
municipal library. It's important because we're very much constrained by the fact that we're municipal, we're not a public library like many other libraries in the state.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so perhaps these priorities.
So let me frame it this way. It's a
Yeah.
question of how much detail the Planning Commission wants to get into about discussing. This is like saying that you want to discuss at length the senior citizens free lunch program.
Well, right underneath the library is Union Station, and I mean, are we going to include that much detail about Union Station? I don't know.
Right. So it begs the question about it's a valued cultural and educational asset that the town's very proud of and very happy to have. But the question of exactly what it does and how it does it are questions that are best answered by the library itself through their own strategic plan.
And you
they have one.
Have you referenced the
Yes.
plan?
And then,
No, we've
we
not
haven't
referenced
We
the
could reference the plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll be right back.
Yeah, we did not reference it. I had looked at it.
And do
Right.
we want to reference it in education or arts and culture
Or economic development.
or economic development?
I mean, I think that, we do talk about lifelong learning in the education chapter. I think we've covered kind of the arts, the library as kind of as an arts institution in the arts and culture chapter. We probably talk about it more perfunctory in the municipal services chapter. So maybe, the education, I think the technology piece, and we do talk about, I think a little bit about workforce education and education. Let me talk that again. But, that might be a place to reference or add something about the work they're doing, or because but there's both an adult learning, which is a little bit,
Yeah.
we do say that on page 27, Brattleboro has a wealth of resources that foster a sense of lifelong learning in the community. Brooks Memorial Library, the colleges, and several other organizations in town offer periodic programs that enrich learning in the community. I mean, we could add something there.
I think the
Right under
valuable comments that he made were about acknowledging they also address preschool age population in the community. Because we mentioned every other population, but not that group, and they
And
do
the
have
teens
programs.
too?
Well, the teens are in here, actually.
The teens are in there.
The teens are
And
here.
then also, finding a way to perhaps bring up the library's resources in the economic development section,
Yeah, I was going to ask about
which
that.
is a
They have it like, it seems kind of exciting, everything that they have going on, and they have it like literally broken down in each category, like one paragraph per. And I understand not wanting to become too much detailed, especially when they should be promoting what they're doing. But they literally have it all broken down already, especially like the technology, and then the fine arts committee, and then development committee.
A lot of
So
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's
Yeah.
a lot.
Well,
I'm
I would
excited
think-
about it. I just learned a bunch that I didn't know about. You know?
What I would suggest would be referencing the link to the town, referencing the plan and putting the link in. And then I think Howard said that the last 2 points were the most important in terms of being forward-thinking technologically. And so a statement that summarizes those last 2 points might be helpful, along with the reference of the new plan. And then it wouldn't, then it would be a slight elaborating of what's there now, but not to dwarf the other things that are in the
Or
plan.
how they operate, because,
Yeah.
I feel like the different committees, that could change over 8 years. I don't know, maybe it won't. It
Yeah.
seems like it's working, but I think, the 6 and 7, to me, one of the things that Howard said was, that if you're not in school and using it, the kind of technology is flying past you.
Yeah,
So I think somewhere in the education, to me, seems like a good fit. And I understand that they do economic development work, but that chapter is more focused on actual numbers and kind of resources
Yeah.
funding resources.
yeah, but definitely put the link to the study and then items 6 and 7. I think that would be great. Does everyone concur?
I do. I have a different, or perhaps additional suggestion to
Mhm.
consider, building off something you were saying. I'm looking again at the goals and policies and action section in education, and we mentioned the library in action 5.4.1. Sorry, I'm dyslexic. That's so hard for me. Which is to maintain and develop library programs and services that contribute to the personal education of all adults of all ages pursuing lifelong learning opportunities. And then encourage learning beyond the classroom by promoting things, blah, 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 at the library and other things. There isn't a lot of emphasis here on younger people, school-age people, or even preschoolers, which I did hear Howard mention. So I just wonder if maybe just tweaking the language there would even be, make that a stronger emphasis.
Oh.
So policy 5.4 is kind of going after the lifelong learning. Policy 5.1 is talking about more the student population.
Yeah,
What if there was
and I
an
don't
action
think,
under
I don't think the
there?
library's in there, that could work
Right, so
even
maybe
better.
something
Mhm.
under there, like an action 5.1 for, I'm not exactly sure what that action will be, but that can get at the preschool and the
Yeah,
younger
that would,
ages
seems
in the
appropriate
program.
to me.
Mhm.
Does that sound like something that, I don't know if that resolves
Is
everything. I think
everyone,
you're still saying you'd like something that
Yeah, something
discusses
about
the 6 and 7.
technology and the virtual status of the library.
Under what
Yeah.
section would that be?
Under,
In
I think it
education
should
or-
be under municipal, because, if we're talking about the fact that it's a municipal entity, you could say, the library is a municipal entity, has a new plan that discusses their mission, and you
So
put the
in that
link in.
section?
Okay,
And
hold
then-
on a second.
Okay.
One of the things that I heard was Howard's excitement for going into the future with fresh people and new ideas and everything. And so that's not really stated like in any of this in detail about what am I trying to say? In detail about their commitment to the future and their excitement to the future of their new programming. They're addressing, there's a few things that they've addressed, like DVD, CD, video, audiobooks, but there's nothing in here about technology, or development.
Yeah, I think, I
Can I
think
explain
in the
that more?
municipal section,
The municipal section has a section on the library.
yes.
So I'm thinking, picking up on what Liz says, if you go to page 70 in the municipal section, it talks about the library. I think, we talk about the renovations they did in 2017. We could add another paragraph.
It's 71.
So, yeah.
Sorry, page 71 after that. We could add
71
something
and
that,
72.
like Liz was alluding to, the library has a new strategic plan. We can put a link in there to it. And then amongst other goals, or I'm not sure what those,
Priorities.
amongst other priorities, will, seeks to, increase our technological literacy, I don't know.
And provide physical and virtual spaces for library users.
And provide
It's the section from the plan.
Spaces for lifelong learners.
The history
physical,
line
yeah,
that's in
and
there that might replace it.
Stimulate the imagination of library users and support lifelong learning through assistance, resources, programming for reading, contemplating, viewing, listening.
That seems a little long for me. But I
just
think
the
the important
lifelong
part
learners.
is the technological understanding. Because that's, the most
because I think,
future.
and then we could add something, this acknowledges the changing roles of libraries and communities.
Mhm,
Perfect.
Exactly. Yeah.
In
Alright.
section 3 for the economic development stuff, we have a big amount of money being spent on workforce development and on new tools for grants, and there's a whole new center downstairs, which is sort of a business arm. that
So
ought
we
to
could,
talk about.
there is, in the education chapter, there is a subsection on workforce development. So
That would
there's-
probably be a more
that
appropriate
would
place.
probably be a better place. Okay.
All right. Do we have agreement on this?
Did we want to incorporate the language in this about the history of the library rather than what's in here?
I don't think that's necessary.
It's just one sentence. The beginning says we're 160 rather than
Rather than
50 years old.
Oh, the
Oh, it
yeah,
does
says we're 50
say,
years
yeah,
old.
it does say opened in 19, because I'm talking
Yeah.
about
Right, the
the
new
current
building.
facility.
Better wording.
Yeah.
Oh, here's a different
Yeah, that's
wording.
kind of unfortunate.
Yeah, but
People are still upset about that.
Oh, in
Oh,
here.
yeah, they are. In
Yeah.
town.
The town.
that they
Oh,
took
yeah.
down
Yeah,
the
I
beautiful
mean, it's sort of, if there
historic
was a sacred
library.
site, it's the old library.
So, we were saying it was founded in
That's right.
1703.
There was an
No,
old,
that's
there was a
sorry.
beautiful
Where am I?
library.
It's gorgeous.
Okay.
Right.
You
I
can
know
look
where
at
the
our
old
whole-
stairs are.
Yeah.
whole history.
You never did story.
Grandfather's
So,
It's a post office.
the post office. That was what flipped the community from not being very focused on the historic assets of downtown, and led to the saving of Union Station and it turning into the museum.
What year?
Same with Jackie Kennedy and Grand Central Station. Probably happened around the same
I
time.
didn't know that you were going to end that sentence with Grand Central Station. I thought you were going to say something completely different, but that's okay, I guess.
So what if in the very first, we can say
the
Brattleboro
historic
has had a
preservation.
library for over 160 years. Should I say the current library facility is located on Main Street in the downtown and opened in 1967?
Yes.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yep, you can.
Okay, all right.
That's
So
cool.
we'll add that, if
Yep.
that sounds good to
Yeah,
everybody.
this is Howard's report.
Yeah.
Back to, so the other issue I just want to resolve, back to the workforce. So page 27 in the education chapter. You know what?
Thanks, Howard.
Good to see you.
Rod, I think there's some more copies of the plan, and I heard beeping, so I think paper might need to be ready. Would you fix that?
Yeah, yeah.
No, they're only just running one view.
Yeah. So,
Workforce
So
on the
under-
bottom of 27.
workforce, did we talk about work now? So then I can add a new paragraph, like the library has dedicated, I'm not exactly sure. Sorry.
What the library has dedicated.
Dedicated resources
Resources.
for workforce development.
No, it's replaced tone and bottle. It's a little bit more tone.
Oh, I wondered why. Can I just see this for a second, Josh?
What page would you like?
It's okay.
Oh, here.
It's
here
coming
it
out
is.
fine.
It's not, the workforce stuff isn't in there.
It's not in here.
I don't think
The
so.
library workforce? No.
Because he mentioned something about a new space. and-
New space.
Like, I'm trying to figure,
New space and new resources.
It sounded to me like programming, like funding for programming.
yeah.
Well, it's gonna
that's-
be in the plan.
All right, I'll look it up in the plan.
Yeah.
If you're.
Did this, the library strategic plan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that would go under strengthening job training, workforce development, or under the economic development, providing more grants and opportunities.
It would
for-
go under the discussion of workforce development on page 28 of the education chapter. And then we also had talked about putting in, there was the policy 5.1 in the education chapter. So if we added a 5.14, I don't know what we want it to say,
Early
but there's
childhood
some,
ed.
yeah,
Something about-
something acknowledging the library's role in.
Yeah.
It does say continue to provide financial support for early education. Do we just want to expand that financial support for early education and programming or resources through the library? Thanks for sharing.
That, I like that, but I wonder if that takes away from the,
Specifically this.
specifically the financial.
Yeah.
I'll make you some room.
I would
Sorry.
make, I would
No,
make
fine.
5 or
No
almost,
worries.
a mirror of 5 or 1.
Hot off the presses.
Okay, so something like maintain and develop library programs that are geared towards early education or
Yeah.
early
That's great.
childhood.
Yeah.
Okay. Did everybody catch that?
Yep. Sounds good.
Okay. All right.
Great. All right.
You want to talk about
You want to talk about the arts
set of that?
question? I have a comment on that. On page 57, we have a thing that says, the town has demonstrated support for blah, blah, blah. And then they have, and in reference to the Arts Committee, they have been active in promoting opportunities for art in the public realm. If they're no longer doing that, should we have that sentence in there?
That's
Didn't
probably
it just become sort of dwindly in the last couple
Right.
months?
Yeah, and I would say though that that
Yeah.
sentence
Six.
probably was a holdover from 2013 when actually
When they were very
there
active.
was some public arts projects like sidewalk art and a little bit more going on. So that so I mean that sentence could
Can't we say something that is more encouraging, like we wish the town arts committee would revive itself?
No, I think
More
you're going to have
aspirational?
to assume
Yeah.
that the Arts Committee is going to reformulate itself, and I think that this report should merely direct the reader to the fact that there is an Arts Committee and that they should be the ones who are directing these efforts.
I'm inclined to agree, although I have a question to help clarify my understanding, because I feel a little ignorance of the processes here. So it's, as I understand, it's not the role of this document to decide what committees do what and how they're governed. That's
That's a good point.
that's separate. So it feels to me like if we're putting something in here, this isn't really the appropriate place for that. And I'm so for that reason, unless I am confused, I'm inclined to agree with you. I think the assumption should be that that is a committee, and then the onus is on, you know, the whatever, however the town mechanism is for putting that into place. And if it becomes a ongoing issue where one or more committees aren't having enough people in order to have the town government function, then I think it needs to be kicked back as that we need to look at what is the process for how those committees get put into place, and do we need to have a fallback in those cases or something? Like, it
Yeah.
becomes a separate part of the process than this document.
Well, Kate, I think
Am I
that's a
off base,
good.
or-
No, I think you're absolutely
Good
right. I think
point.
it's a good point that we should just check ourselves that this is the town plan and it's primarily a land use plan.
So, and for my ignorance, where does the committee stuff get, where is that? Is that like the town charter or something?
Well, it's the
Where is that
select board
defined?
actions, and how do they?
People, for a committee that doesn't exist, or for a project that hasn't happened yet, people make they go before the select board and seek for something to be done. And so I think the history of the arts committee is that it was in the 2009,
2008.
2008.
That's what it says right here.
That's right, yeah. So there was a lot of discussion at that point about economic development, and the local arts community was looking for a stronger voice in the policy making of the town then around questions of economic development. And an arts committee was formed at the suggestion of people, discussion with the select board. And so then it was, I think, conceived of as something that would foster collaboration amongst not-for-profits involved in the arts sector, and give the arts sector more focus and a stronger voice in economic development discussions that were happening around the time. In the intervening 8 years, 9 years, it's pulled off quite a bit, and of more art project-based stuff, and been, I think, less visible in the economic development policy setting space. And it's one of those weird things. I've had discussions with the town manager about it, including what's the current status, what's going to happen, what's being proposed. And as staff, we're in a really difficult situation where we're also it's not appropriate for us to suggest that the town abandon a committee, right? So no one's come before the select board and said, you know what you should do? You should clean up the website, you should get rid of this arts committee because they don't meet anymore. No one's saying that, and so we're not suggesting it, we're not, so it's, the hope is that with encouragement, people will step forward and want to reconstitute the arts committee, and it will become effective again, and it can fulfill these things that are contained in the town plan. The town plan's going to last for 8 years, so.
Yeah, so for us to say something about how it is now, I think is not realistic, and that we should just make assumptions about this town committee, not characterizing it as good or functioning good or well, just that it exists, and that we assume that its charges X, Y, and Z.
So one of the areas that I think that we could address her concern, like I feel like the text is written is fine, but there is, it's the implementation table at the end.
Yes. So
It actually is under it's page 110. And there is a blank.
Oh, so you're gonna add a check mark?
Well, no, it seems like it was probably an oversight on
you
my
have-
part,
do you have-
but at some point when
do
I
you
was
have one,
cleaning
Kate?
up this
Do you guys-
table,
There's a copy right here.
No, I don't have
there's
one.
extra copies.
Yes.
Rob's separating. So, if you look at leverage existing 8.1.2, action 8.1.2, it hasn't been assigned a leave responsibility, and nor has 8.1.3, and it's possible. Well, this was a newly written section, so we could put TAC in there, but we could also put something else in there so.
I think the encouragement is like one of the key words and should be in the town plan, and also excitement. And obviously, we shouldn't say we should assume that the arts committee is healthy, and because it's
Yes.
going to be healthy in
Yes.
the future once people
I,
move forward and
I
make it-
completely agree. I don't think we should characterize anything as.
Yeah.
Defunct or
Yeah, and
non-functional,
because
right?
that's a short term, and we
Yeah.
have to assume for the long term that it's gonna be
Exactly.
viable.
Yeah, there's-
Although I would imagine that if you asked everybody about their specific task and role, that there'd be a certain amount of excitement. And I think the town plan would sound like a movie promo if
Yeah.
we said that everything was just so exciting.
But what's
The
wrong
other
with
one,
that,
like,
though?
like, look, if we're worried about precedent, so Ag Advisory Committee is another non-functioning committee right now. There are not enough to have a quorum
How does
of
the
that committee. So they don't meet, and they're assigned jobs, because until that board goes away,
We're just gonna say
Yeah.
situation normal and proceed.
and if at some point it goes away, then we would look at this and say, oh, somebody else has to pick up the slack on that. And
Right.
And that's a task for the select board.
Yeah.
So getting back to the
I can
page
explain. what Ag
57,
Advisory is.
there are these very specific things that somebody is supposed to do.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm just confused about the purpose of this, because you were saying land use, but then these things like plan for public art and area-wide plans.
Yeah, and again, I think that's
That's-
left over from the old
No,
plan.
this is
No?
all new.
Oh,
But
okay.
but incorporating art into master plans, saying might be a good location. I think placemaking, even if it's just like a parklet. Those are typical planning kind
Yeah.
of activities. Yeah.
Page
so-
115.
Partner, 57, 58, partner with local artists to foster performances in public spaces.
Where did we sound that one too?
That's the,
The bullets on the bottom of page
Yeah.
57?
yeah, I think this was what she was talking about, is that they sound wonderful, but like, who's doing them?
So
And how do you
the
understand
first would be
that
the
from this?
library. So if you go to the back to the implementation chapter,
Right.
these basically, we did look at, so what you see on page 57 works its way into the actions that are at the beginning of the chapter.
Okay.
And so then we take that at the end as a kind of an implementation matrix. And so it's abbreviated, but, the planning commission could develop a list of technical resources and just put it on the website or something.
Could the bullets at the bottom of page 57, could they or should they reference the implementation table? Like, for-
No,
it's
not the way
because
we-
or is it
The
not-
report
goes
as
the
a
other way
whole, like
around.
everything is
Everything.
directed to
Well,
the
look,
implementation.
we're supposed to evaluate ways to fund public art.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh,
Why,
okay.
why are we doing that and not an arts commission?
Well, we could put the-
Yeah, why not
defunct they
why
are.
not the town arts committee?
Because here
Well, the
we're,
idea here is one of the ways to fund public art, so it would be
Right.
the municipality kind of supports, it would be perfectly acceptable for a town arts committee to do that. So
To
we could
evaluate
add-
ways to fund public
We
art.
could add that in, but it's also something a planning commission could take up. So one of the ideas is a percent for art. So the planning commission could say, oh, we did this downtown master plan, and we think there's some great spaces for public art. We really want to encourage and beef up the art in our downtown, and here's some ways that it could be funded. And then we could take that to the planning commission. It could be a town arts committee as
Or it
well.
could be both. And so other communities, predominantly on the West Coast, will do something like a percent for art, and then the assumption is that it's public art, or large-scale private development projects that exceed a certain value. They'll be required to either place some money that's based on a formula on the value of the project into a fund that would contribute to the establishment of public art, or they'll have to make some kind of commitment to a public art object or space as part of the site plan. So think, it's tiny, but so think that there's that tiny little seating area in front of Key Bank over the road from Brown Roberts, right? So in a different jurisdiction and in a different context, if that was much bigger, you would say to the bank, oh, you just built yourself a really nice new building, and you've said that it's worth $5 million. So the formula that we're going to use means that you have to give us $50,000 towards public art, or build something to the value of $50,000 that is public art and stick it in the front yard. Then we're all happy. So there are different funding mechanisms that we could look at to actually encourage
And
public space and public placemaking and public art, whether it's funded directly by the developer or the property owner, or whether it's you levy a fund, levy a rate, based on a formula against the developer or the property owner, and that goes to a centralized fund for things to be constructed in a park or whatever, right?
So are we planning on doing that?
It's one of the implementation. It's one of the things that we yet to get to. But yeah, that's what we understood.
it might not be a,
It's not the most beautifully written thing, but that's what we understand it to mean. Value ways to fund public art would be a function of the planning commission, so that
we could add
So
on the
we
town
could
arts.
actually add that in.
Ideally, it might
Let's
be
do
the
that.
town arts.
I think that's a good idea.
That's a fun thing. Listen, I just have a more basic question. What
Sure.
is PSD?
Planning
Services Department. Us.
Staff.
Cool.
You're looking at
Okay.
it.
Well, I would suggest that a
It
happy.
means other things as well, but for now, it means planning services.
All right. So, when in the near future, when this plan is adopted,
Mm-hmm.
then we can go over these implementation things and act on them, the ones that have our
Sure.
names to them.
Yep.
But the other thing that I thought would be a really easy way to remedy our current discussion is to put the Arts Committee initials on this chart.
Right.
In all of the space.
That's fine. I mean,
Also,
Yeah, just have
well,
them
I
do
mean,
that.
especially if there's a functioning town arts committee, I'm
Yeah.
not sure that, maybe it's more of a priority to them than to some of the planning commission projects, so,
Right. And we could work together and whatever. So let's add them to this list
Okay.
in an expansive way.
So how many? Okay. So do you
is there
want?
anything they shouldn't be added to?
The library.
Yeah. I don't think they should be integrating art into infrastructure. I think that's a question for the select board.
Yes.
So they're not like the sidewalk
Oh.
projects and the parking garage thing that shouldn't fall.
Parking garage thing,
I think the
Just-
select board can consult with them
Right.
as they see fit.
all right.
Okay.
I mean, one of the other things is that there is a public art policy that the Town Arts Committee actually put together, and what that does is say that if you're proposing an art project for infrastructure or, public property like the parking garage, then you have to go through a particular process, and it has to be vetted by the Town Arts Committee. So, it just,
So does it go to the town arts committee first and then the select board?
yeah.
Then they should be
Yeah,
on there.
it's probably okay to put tech in there as well. That's cool. That's where you'd
All right.
start it.
Yeah.
But it's ultimately, whether somebody's going to want to have a sculpture at the wastewater treatment plant or not is really going to be a question for the select board.
I think 8.3.1 that incorporate into master plans, I mean,
That's
we do
our
master plans.
stuff.
That's
Yeah.
our
That's
stuff.
our stuff.
I mean, we can consult
And
with them,
PSD.
but it's not,
Yeah, really.
yeah.
All right.
Okay.
I think we've tackled that. Is everybody happy with that?
Yeah.
Happy.
Great.
Okay.
What's next? The letters.
Yeah. You want to start with Rich?
Yes.
Bullshit? Do you? Yes, Dave.
So I actually, in the version that I printed out, I'm not sure why, but he, in his italicized area, he recommended some additions, and I think there was maybe only one sentence that he striked out. So if I want to pass this around, the yellow is new language, the white is existing. I thought that what he wrote there, was proposing for revised language was
Bless you.
perfectly fine. I would have no issues with rewriting
And
that.
this, it's in italics? Or is it
Yeah,
slightly different?
he's proposing in italicized.
Bless you.
He mentions it's in text or whatever, but it didn't come out whether, I don't know if it was colored or whatever. So what I highlighted
Oh.
is new language.
Fine.
It kind of sits around some language that I already wrote. There may
Oh,
be
okay.
one sentence that was rewritten or struck
And you're
out,
happy
but
with that?
I'm totally fine with that language and making that change. I think it was well.
Yeah, no, it's nicely written.
Yep.
I definitely, with the letter, I think there's some very interesting points. His last part about wanting to do, I sent my copy around, so there is his last paragraph. I thought was really interesting. I'm worried about putting some sort of policy in particular place about preempting, avoiding, mitigating further destruction of cultural heritage without actually having done the work to determine
Identify
what
what-
constitutes.
Get into a
Right,
Bad
that may be a
situation
way
there.
to.
I mean,
way
it
to
could be a
save
project-
Confederate statute at some point.
It could be something to add as a policy of like to kind of identify, go through some sort of process to identify cultural heritage stuff. I'm uncomfortable with going so far because this would be used in a land use context if we had really
Why
strong
don't we
language.
say that we are considering these thoughts and we'll see about whether or not we want to go, these have been recommended and they're under consideration for the future.
What do we say about preservation?
So preservation is on page 9, 59, sorry,
59.
it's chapter 9. So we do say review development projects to ensure minimal negative impact on historic and or scenic resources. I think he has an interesting point. When I spoke about the Abenaki archaeological finds in Brattleboro, was really dealing with the archaeological artifacts that they found, so I was thinking of it as a historic resources. I think he's got a very
He's talking
well-made
about
point about it's our
Prehistory.
cultural heritage, and it's not, it's still living, kind of.
We're still here.
But I was thinking of here's an artifact that was found, and it's history. Policy 9.2 is to review development projects to ensure minimal negative impact on historic and or scenic resources.
You could
So-
just add the word cultural.
Yeah,
I mean, maybe it's better to have an action that we actually go and identify cultural assets.
Well, that's a very big undertaking.
yeah.
I know.
But maybe it's important.
I think that if the policy were just, if you added the word cultural, then they would all have the same weight and we'd be covered with the thought that's trying to be transmitted.
So, where were you suggesting adding the word cultural?
In what Sue just read.
policy
Policy
9.2.
9.2, review development projects to ensure minimal negative impact on historic,
see.
cultural, and or scenic
comma,
resources.
I like his term of cultural heritage,
Yeah.
not to be
Okay.
confused with the arts and culture
Yes.
Yeah.
chapter. I
Cultural
mean, I
heritage.
think next plan, I definitely see like some sort of merging and thing going on, but I like the cultural heritage
I vote for cultural heritage.
better. I think our cultural heritage still
I like
isn't
that.
necessarily defined.
Yeah.
But for example, there's the Swedeville neighborhood, and there's
Yep.
lots of different ethnic groups that kind of came to town, and workers, and
Irish and Italian from New Jersey.
sure.
Yeah. That's the thing. That's
You know
my
where
family.
that, and you know where that's ended up.
Yeah. We are here, yeah.
Yeah.
So do we want to add cultural heritage there?
Yes,
I think
please.
it'd be.
Yeah.
I think we
Yeah.
do. Anyone not want to include cultural heritage?
I think
Speak
under
now and
under a
be
CLG
damned.
program, we could kind of begin
Yes.
to document. I think there was a town that did oral histories you know, you could kind of begin to document.
Are we doing something like that?
We are gonna look at certified local government, yeah.
Oh, are you saying, have we
No, I
done?
was thinking
No.
narratives.
Have we done oral history
No,
stuff?
narratives haven't been done.
Narratives? No, there's a project, there's an interesting
There was
project.
one.
Yeah,
Um,
the Marlboro's collaborating on some kind of.
Right.
Shanta was involved in it.
Shanta's involved in one, and there's another one, I think, on the history of publishing and printing in that.
There's another one on the history of gay and lesbian communities in the
Okay.
region.
So there you
Yeah,
go.
I've seen
So
that.
there are a lot of
Yeah.
them.
Right,
They're mostly done by other nonprofits, not
right.
town groups.
Right.
So I'm wondering if we want an action item around what he's suggesting or exploring the possibility of addressing what he's suggesting.
I think we were just gonna add cultural heritage to that existing policy.
And then the
And then
text
I-
was gonna
And then the
include the
text is
stuff.
gonna, the edits that were
Right.
passed around.
I actually think another way to address one of his concerns is we've got this catch-all of other historic resources. I think that we should change that header to cultural heritage because that's where we talk about
Yes.
the different neighborhoods. We talked about the industrial kind of past, and then we talk about the Abenaki. So I think cultural heritage might be more appropriate, and that way, when you link the policy to cultural heritage, you're looking at this section and understanding what we mean by that.
So take out other historic resources and change it to cultural heritage.
Yeah.
And are you suggesting adding cultural heritage to both spots? This chapter and that other sentence that you were gonna add it to?
Yes.
Yes, which is at the
Super.
front of that chapter.
That's great.
And then we'll also make the changes that he suggested there.
Right.
And then
Well, that sounds good. That sounds like a very thorough response. Everybody happy with that?
Yep.
Anybody not happy with that?
Nope.
Okay, let's move to Lori Callahan.
I think we hand this over to the pros.
Yes.
I think the edits are definite.
Yeah. So, I would like to hear from Rod and Sue about, is there anything in this comment letter that they find problematic, or should they just do it?
So obviously the typos, no problem. The
Yeah.
natural resources stuff
No problem.
didn't have an issue with. We had a little discussion about the municipal roads general permit. We do address stormwater in the plan.
Yeah, in detail in various
Quite a bit.
sections quite a bit, but for the most part in land use and natural resources.
It came out of natural resources.
Right.
It's just in municipal.
And so,
I think it's one of those things that, like, the law is in place. We're gonna have to come into compliance. We didn't necessarily feel like it needed to be.
Is this 64, Act 64 that she's making reference to?
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, the Clean Water Act. And so the requirement of the Clean Water Act is that a municipality, all municipalities will have to get what they call a general permit for all the town roads, which will require, first of all, an inventory of all the town roads and what the stormwater conditions are. And then the town coming up with a multi-year plan to address the issues such that by 2026, or I think it's 2026,
To meet.
do you be able to meet the requirements of the Clean Water Act with specific regard to stormwater from town roads?
2036.
36.
2036.
Yeah.
Got some time.
Jeez, I'm gonna be dead.
People be driving cars
A
by
lot
then?
of us are feeling comfortable with that aspect of it.
There are
In
some.
fact, a lot of us are really counting on that. In the municipal world, it's like, that's awesome, I'll be gone.
You don't necessarily have to be dead.
No,
Just
exactly.
You could just be
retired.
retired
That's
somewhere
fine.
and go, gee, look at all that slime.
So we talk
Yes.
about stormwater on page 69.
Yeah.
It's in the municipal facilities. We're not specific about the road permit or the Clean Water Act. We kind of talk about. We
Yes.
know, the town knows there are some issues with stormwater management, and we know the regs and the impending deadlines, and we know we have other issues as well.
Right.
In just the system and its functionality and how to maintain it, and beyond just roads.
Is there anything wrong with putting in a line saying particularly in order to bring us into compliance with Act 64 2015? Just to make her happy?
I don't have a problem with that.
No.
Yeah, I think it's fine. I think getting into any kind of more of a detailed discussion about what it is or how it's going to happen,
It's
given the
premature.
timeline, and B, given where we're at, is premature.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
this isn't the Public Works Master Plan, it's the
No.
No,
Planning
because
Commission.
that's on a post-it note on the dashboard of one
And
of the
right now,
trucks.
the regional planning commission, the regional planning commission is actually gonna begin doing some road inventories on behalf of towns this summer, I know, or they may have started last summer. but
Regional Commission's
Brattleboro's-
done Brattleboro's.
They have done Brattleboro,
Yeah.
so.
Well,
At
that
least some
was
of that's
easy.
going on.
Yeah.
So,
All right.
so we wanna add in the stormwater management, I mean, the second kind of bullet point, to ensure water quality, we probably comes from the statute, to ensure water quality across the state, a municipal MRGP permit will be required, roads will need a road stormwater management plan. We could just say something like Brattleboro is currently working.
The Regional Planning Commission and VTrans to achieve adherence to the Vermont Water Act, Act 64.
Yeah, that seems,
That
that
sounds
seems
good.
perfect.
That's fine.
Reasonable,
Yeah,
okay.
Okay.
So,
And
are
there
we all
isn't
good
much
with-
more detail on that. I mean, the inventory is fairly early. I think they checked that. I think that,
There's also a big funding problem with the Vermont Clean Water Act right now.
big one? I thought it was just small.
Yeah,
Like, they don't have any money at all.
and they haven't set aside any.
And they haven't set aside any
They
money.
can't agree
and
on
they
how
can't
to
agree on how
pay.
they're gonna do it. And Lake Champlain is still priority number 1
And
through
that
100.
other lake is even worse.
Like Cardi
Yeah.
and the ag,
Yes,
the farm.
and the farm.
Okay, are we good with this?
Yes, on to Maya.
Maya.
Okay.
All right, these look very straightforward.
Yeah, we can knock these out pretty quickly.
Do we really need to make reference to homeschooling?
No.
Good. I'm okay with that. And the
Don't we
move,
make reference? We did. We may have done that, but we used to. Okay, anyway.
And just, it's not the role of the town plan to show people resources for homeschooling.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think that seems
So,
to make sense.
I mean, if we do, it's an accident and.
You didn't mean it.
We should
and we
apologize.
should apologize.
Public schools.
Yeah, no, we're pretty silent on the public schools too.
We think children should go to public school, and if not, they should just not go to school at all. Oh, no, no, we just, okay. So page 27, we checked, what'd you find out about
I'm
those?
not, I couldn't
I don't
quite
think they-
tell on Osher Lifelong Learning, so it was at the former regional library
Yes.
up on Route 5.
Yes.
Is it I know that there is a spring lecture series that's happening at New England Youth Theater, but I don't know if all their programming is
I
happening out
don't
of
think so,
NYP.
because I think that there've been some things at other places, like Marlboro Grad Center and things like that.
Yeah, so I think that
Yeah, I want to
There's a
say, I think it is at NEYT. I think I met somebody.
all of it though. I mean, I know
Yeah,
there's a
I don't know if
lecture
it's all of
series.
it, but that in fact,
Well, they must have a phone number.
Yeah.
So if we fact check it and find out
Yeah.
that it is now
Whatever,
headquartered,
whatever it
Yep.
is.
and if it's not, okay, all right, that's fine. And you're okay with that, right? Whatever the answer is.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. The next one, we actually have a discussion about housing stock
Wow.
in the housing chapter.
We do.
And it's quite detailed, and it goes through the implications of having such old housing stock, including that it's hard to heat, and it's hard to maintain, and the kind of stock that we've got is a large number of large Victorians, which are expensive and difficult to maintain, and blah, blah, blah. So there's a
You're so
fairly
negative.
lengthy discussion.
So
That they're really nice to look at.
They're nice to live in.
And and they're probably really nice to live in.
So what's
Really?
your
So what does she
So
want
what's
us
your
to do?
complaint?
I don't know
So
what she wants.
she's saying here, a fund or some sort of
Yeah,
access
access.
to loans and grants for renovations and upgrades is important to keeping and maintaining our
Yeah.
existing housing stock. Maybe some sort of private-public partnership. There is, in the local housing programs table on page 39, there are some resources. There's the apartments and homes, which is, the idea is to construct an apartment that will help you make your home more affordable if you can rent it out and get some rent coming in. There is Save Our Homes, Brattleboro Area Affordable Housing Coalition. They do some admittedly small, no interest loans for housing emergencies. There was one for low interest loans for repairs and improvements to rental housing. That's the rental
Yes.
housing improvement program. I mean, there maybe isn't an existing program that quite covers what she's looking for, so I'm
Right.
not really sure.
Well, the USDA and the Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust also offer
There's also
rehab
the,
loans.
Viseco,
This-
Heat Saver, V Green,
Yeah.
because I use those too.
There you
They're
go.
not
So
in
I
there.
think that there's all I'd say is, in somewhat typical Vermont fashion, there's a lot of different smallish organizations that
Yeah.
cater
Some
or
are small,
respond
you can
to
piece
this.
things together.
Do we need to have a little, I think we have some left, but we don't have everything that was just mentioned.
It would be really nice if there was, a sort of a one place to go to find all the resources, but they change often enough that it's not the place that they'll be out of date by the time
Yeah.
we printed it. So it's just
Shouldn't we have a note in there that says that? Like there's, a little thing
Yeah.
that says,
There is funding available from various private and
various
public
other-
resources.
yeah, and for most up-to-date information, one should check online or go to,
go to Wyndham Windsor and Sevco, I would say.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Is there a
so I
fund
wasn't
for like
following that.
paint?
On this chart, but it's not complete. There
Wish
should
there
just be
was.
a note
Apparently
that
there
says
isn't.
It's not
Yes.
complete.
Or people have decided that it's super toxic or something because there's not a lot of it around.
But if we did a CLG, Bellows Falls had a Paint Your Lady program, and the winner actually got their house. I think they got the supplies for their house to be painted,
Cool.
so they have lots of Victorians.
What's
That
a
was pretty
CRG?
popular. Certified Local Government, the CLG.
Oh.
Remember way back when we were developing the 2013 town plan, we actually talked about how we would want to try and get a fund together, so we'd have block competitions, and so
Yeah.
if somebody painted their house and it was voted the best one on the block or something, that we would
Oh, I'd win.
refund their paint, the cost of their paint.
What color is your house?
Gray and orange.
Ooh, orange.
Orange, it's very good. Well, orange is reddish.
Rushed.
Yeah, like
She
the
has a
color of
mid-century modern house.
the color of San Francisco Bridge, basically.
Cool.
I like it.
All right, so nothing.
Yeah.
Do nothing other than that.
Yeah, I think at
Make
least
a positive
least
statement about
positive
resources
statement about
existing.
resources available. Yeah, we okay with that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Everybody good with
Page
that?
41.
Okay.
The
The
Green
next
River
one.
Terrace is the former lamplighter. Do we need to say that?
No, we don't. And it would probably be better for Wyndham Windsor if we kept on calling it Great River Terrace so that people came to refer to it as Great River Terrace and forget forever that it was the Lamplighter Motel. Okay?
Right on. Okay.
That's a
good.
positive thing.
Yeah, I think I said that really positively, right?
Yeah, you did.
I'm working on it. Am I getting better?
What is yes? What is yes to a building code?
We talk about improving. We talk about improving the building code, and we talk about we talk about improving the housing stock, and one way that you could do that is to
Implement a
implement a
building
building code, a local
Right.
building code.
Right.
And so this comes from the previous 2013 plan, to actually look at building code and enforcement.
And wasn't
this is
there a
just a
particular historical
There is
reasons
yes,
why
Brattleboro
we
used to
don't?
have one, they no longer do. So it's not inconceivable, and in fact, the state is actually, there's some legislation going on looking into if you have rental properties, that you would have to
Yeah.
register it, and then there'd be some more inspections.
Certificate of occupancy?
We do certificate.
We do certificates of occupancy for zoning permits, which is a little odd.
But not
it's-
for renting.
So it's
Not
it's
for-
already in here, she's just expressing
Yep.
support.
She was just saying raw.
Ah,
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's okay.
Duly noted.
So raw is good.
Yeah, right?
All right, Vermont Jazz Center?
Yeah,
Is
we got that.
that's
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
that's fine.
Page 70, last paragraph on wastewater treatment.
I think wastewater treatment is confusing. Yeah.
I've slowed down, they don't blow up.
So, last paragraph.
So is that the facility is able to produce Class A biosolids acceptable for use as fertilizer?
Yes.
This ability will allow
Allows the facility.
the facility to accept waste that is not currently accepted.
Oh, you know what? I probably tried to.
Merge two sentences.
No, I probably tried to update it because when the other plan was being written, it wasn't finished yet. And so they are able to take,
I don't think it's confusing.
there's
You just have
some
to
weird,
You have to take the S off allow.
Yeah.
this, but I think they actually are doing it now. So it should be this allows the facility to accept waste that is not currently accepted. I'm pretty sure that they are doing that now. It was poor editing on my part when I took it from a this will happen to it has happened. So,
So we can fix that.
yeah.
That's not a policy change.
Yeah.
All right.
Page 74 is
didn't
true.
understand.
Page 74, we think she's right.
Yeah, so I can fix that up.
Page 94.
Sorry, would it be less confusing on page 70 to say something like this ability allows the facility to accept
Yes.
additional kinds of waste such as,
Sounds
you.
good, Kate.
rather than accept
Do you
non-accepted?
edit on a regular basis?
Page 94.
Yep.
A low minimum lot size?
This was weird. So this one that's a holdover from the previous plan where we actually were considering that we maybe wanted to raise the minimum lot size. And instead, what we did was we did the conservation subdivision as a requirement in the rural or residential, so you could cluster and have more open space around it, because we did face some criticism that just having 5 or 10 acres lots doesn't do
Right,
much.
so-
It still parcelizes the land, and that's not really what we wanted. So,
You want to just get rid of that sentence then?
Yeah.
Because it's a remnant.
Yeah, I think just delete the sentence.
Wait, delete which sentence? This zoning district has 3-acre minimum lot size?
A low minimum lot size, yeah. Because it was superseded by the action of the zoning change.
Delete the last sentence.
Oh, delete the last
Delete
sentence, a low minimum lot size
yeah.
such as 3, okay, all right.
But
Yeah.
it's true that this zoning district has a 3-acre minimum lot size.
it is, but if you wanted to subdivide, you actually could have a smaller lot size, and then there would be open space around it. So
Yes.
it's kind of, you cluster the development, and then everybody has.
So we've got a different, so if you want to subdivide in that zoning district, basically you have to employ a different strategy. And so it's pretty hard to come up with a conventional, hillside or something with just 3-acre parcels chunked out. You're going to have to do something more imaginative than that clearly does minimize the impact of fragmentation. But you could end up with 6 half-acre parcels and then open space that was shared, right? And therefore have the downside of fragmentation is removed. All right, so
So,
that's,
Well, so no, the next part is, so those were all the comments we received.
right. From other people.
okay, so there's a potential motion on the table. Would anyone like to make the potential motion?
What would the potential motion be? Is it to bring the
To submit the
draft
proposed 2018 town plan as revised
Because we made
plan
revisions to
tonight?
that.
Yes.
with the written report to the select board for their consideration, and to file a copy of the proposed 2018 town plan and written report with the town clerk for public review.
Motion to do all of that.
We can discuss after the motion's made, I guess.
Are you sure?
Anyone want a second?
Second.
All right, discussion.
So I was just concerned that we didn't have anyone come in and comment about the housing section.
No one's
Of the
required to
town plan?
comment.
We didn't have participation, and yet we name a lot of groups in that section. I just wonder if we've done enough to engage them in this process.
Who? Housing groups?
Housing.
All the people who live in houses in Brattleboro?
Wyndham, Windsor, Brattleboro Housing.
All of the nonprofits that are mentioned in that section that do the work.
Our office works pretty closely, well, very closely with Brattleboro Housing Partnerships
And Wyndham Windsor.
and Wyndham Windsor.
So if the larger organizations programmatically, they know we're in train with this, they
use
comment-
it.
They use it.
And their grant
and
applications.
And we write them letters of support from it all the time. So basically, if you go back to the 2013 chapter, both Wyndham Windsor and Brattleboro Housing Partnerships had a lot of input in the construction of the housing chapter in particular, and other parts of the plan as well. And then the smaller ones, they're mostly supported out of the municipality. So rental housing improvement program, I sit on the committee. We haven't met for 3 years because no one's wanted any money from it. Apartments and homes, we support that group. They're chugging along. They're doing fine.
Yeah. I think it's important to remember that the reasons why this plan is being modified are
Right.
for specific state
Right.
law requirements.
Right.
And the bulk of all of the work is really just minor updates from the previous plan, so.
So there's nothing really factual or organized, so no organization is now defunct that's mentioned, so it's fact checked in that sense. All the committees that are identified still exist. The roles and functions of the various not-for-profit housing organizations still exist. It's still doing for them what they want it to do. There's
We've also worked with Groundworks, we should say, really
Yes,
closely
right.
over the last couple of years.
Yeah, so I don't think any of the emergency or longer term housing organizations in the community in town are either oblivious that we're doing it or concerned about the contents of it, so.
I mean, we can make a special, I can send it directly
Right,
to them, we can make these changes
I
and
sent
then.
it directly to them.
Okay, because there's,
so-
there are
right.
more opportunities with the select board.
And generally what I'd say, just knowing them the way I do, if they had an issue with it, we'd have heard about it by now, and if we haven't heard from them, then news is good news. Is general, because they're busy doing,
It's
they're
their
busy doing what
job
they're doing.
to
Yeah,
be aware of these things, and
Right.
obviously they are. And
Right.
no issue.
right. I think it works fine. If there was a particular organization or theme or issue that that you thought would need to be addressed, then that would be different. But I don't think there's anything out of order in that sense for them. Yeah. So
So we have a motion on the table. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone abstaining? All right, now, the next thing.
anybody opposed?
The next thing is, before we adjourn, when is our next meeting?
April 2nd is on the books.
Right.
I'm gonna have
And
to
then-
figure out an agenda this week because,
Yeah.
and get it out to you because I'm on vacation next week.
All right, we're good
Is
with that?
that-
Yep. And so, and then April 3rd is the next select board meeting, right? Is the select board
Yes.
meeting the night after? But
Yeah.
so then this
So
goes.
maybe we'll actually have a parking study to discuss with them on April 2nd.
I think that would be really good.
It would be really
I think
good.
that's it. My expectation is that we can discuss the parking study for downtown. We obtained a
Cool.
grant to hire a consultant to study parking as part of the downtown master plan.
Super, that'll be
And so
fun.
the very preliminary findings so far are that we've got plenty of parking, and it isn't exactly where there's demand for parking doesn't quite line up with where the provision of parking is. So using
It's not
price,
awful, there's just certain times
yeah,
of it.
just using price mechanisms mostly, assuming that people are rational, which is a big error, but still, just go with this.
Don't we already know they aren't?
Yes.
Okay.
But you're not thinking like the engineer that's writing this report. So you would use pricing mechanisms to then encourage people to park somewhere
Engineers
else.
are rational.
Every time.
Economists know that's not true.
Right.
Right.
Some of them.
Okay,
This
Right,
one.
not all of them.
Because what is on, is there anything coming down the pipe for? the agenda for next month?
Well,
Well,
we're
that would be
thinking it's
that.
gonna, we're expecting the
Parking.
parking study.
And then,
That's exciting.
yeah, it is exciting.
Yeah.
Um,
When does work on the downtown?
Resume.
It will be resuming. It's not gonna resume at the April 2nd meeting. This is, like, that kind of gets incorporated. You should probably look for me, because I'm away next week. Not that Rod can't do stuff, he's got a lot on his plate too.
Okay.
Yeah,
Other
we
than
can-
wishing Sue a nice vacation,
Yeah, happy
She's gonna need it.
Thank you.
shall we adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
That's
Thank you all
excellent.
very much.
Thank you, everybody. That's excellent.